once you've made $20,000 in your business, you have now solidified that you know how to make money. And now all we have to do is do that again in a shorter amount of time. Today's episode is centered on your first 20K. I want to really sell you on this concept of making your first $20,000 in your business. Why that should be what you are focused on as you are scaling to your first six figures. And then we're going to talk about some of the things that your brain might be saying when you think about making your first $20,000 in your business. It took me a full year to make my first $20,000 in my business. That first year was a lot of hustle, grind, hard work, trudging uphill, because I didn't actually have the framework and the process that I have now to sell, right? I didn't actually really know what I was doing, right? And so it took me that full year to learn how to sell, to learn how to sell with confidence, to develop my intellectual property. But I will say this about that year. Number one, I'm grateful for that year because that year taught me the intellectual property and what I needed to know in order to make it to my first six-figure year, which happened the following year within the first 4 to 6 months or so of that year. So it got me to where I needed to be, and it helped me really flesh out how to teach my clients how to do this, right? So I did all of that so my clients don't have to, right? When I think about my first year in business, it was so hard, but it was so rewarding. And that hustle, I'll never have to do that again. I will never have to work that hard again. It was very challenging. There were a lot of moments where I was like, I don't know if I'm gonna make it. I don't know if this is gonna work for me, but I got it done. I got it done, right? And then I built the belief for myself that, okay, I did it in a year. Now it's time to do it in 6 months, right? And then I just started shortening the amount of time that it took me to make that $20,000. I really want you to center in on what if it was just about making your first 20K. And here's the thing. When I say to people that I want you to focus on making your first $20,000 in your business, two thoughts primarily pop up in your head. It's really interesting what our brain does when we think about setting a goal or attaining a goal. So when I talk to women in my community and my clients about making their first $20,000, the two things that pop up are, number one, $20,000 is not enough. I don't want to just focus on $20,000, Dr. Kimmy. I'm trying to replace my salary. And I work with doctors, so that's going to be six figures, multiple six figures, right? So I'm trying to replace my salary. I don't want to just focus on $20,000. But at the same time, right? At the same exact moment, likely your brain is also saying, I have no idea how to make $20,000. That's not attainable. I could never do that. I don't know how to do it because I haven't made $1, or I've only made a few $100s or a couple $1,000s. How do I jump from that to 20K? So it's this interesting thing that our brain does. Both of them, first of all, totally normal. Both of them are just your brain trying to protect you, right? Because if your brain can just protect you from starting, if your brain can tell you, don't start, sis, don't even start this process, then you don't have to worry about what will happen if you fail, which is all your brain is trying to prevent you from doing, is failing. Don't let your brain tell you that that is not enough. That's not good enough. People out here making $100,000. I want you to just imagine if you don't start to make your first 20K because you're so focused on the fact that other people are making six figures, when are you ever going to make the 20K? They made that six figures $20,000 at a time also. right? At some point, they had to start. All they did was learn how to make it in a shorter and shorter amount of time, right? So that is like the biggest thing I want you guys to know. Your first 20K is the hardest part. There's a switch that happens in your brain after 20K where you're like, okay, I know how to make money. This is no longer something I'm striving for. I mean, honestly, I want you guys to have that switch, even if you've made $1 in your business. You make your first 5K, you know how to make money, right? You're just doing it in shorter and shorter blocks of time. But what I'm saying is your brain will tell you $20,000 is not enough when the vast majority of businesses are making that in an entire year. And the thing is, now you have the process to do that and take it to the next level. So it'll never take you a year again. Unless you take yourself out of the game, it will never take you a year again. And I'm not even saying it'll take a year. I've had clients do it in 6 months. I've had clients do it in 24 hours. But let's say just on the conservative end, just giving yourself full abundance of time. If it took a year, that is a success. That is a huge success because the next year, listen, it's going to be gangbusters. It is never going to take you that long again. Focusing on your first 20K, I want you all to just take your brain to that place of focusing on that. Okay? It is going to make the journey so much more doable, right? Like sometimes we want to shoot for the moon and the stars, but we haven't even gotten past the roof of our house. Right? And I want you to shoot for the stars. I want you to have $1 million business. That is what I want for you. I want to help you create your first 6 figures. But in order to do that, I want you to focus on 20K increments at a time. I want you to be leading with the emotion of excitement, certainty, like it is done. Right? And when you focus on your first 20K, it's so much easier to do that. If you focus on, well, I'm not going to be happy till I make my first million, right? I mean, I want to believe I'm going to be happy when I make my first million, but that doesn't mean I don't celebrate. I celebrate every win, every single win in my business. And when I set a goal for my brain that is small, bite-sized, but it's enough of a stretch. That's actually not a problem. That's actually a really good place to be in. It's small enough that you can sort of start to wrap your mind around it. Right? If I tell you to focus on your first million, you're probably like, okay, I'm just going to lie in bed and not do anything because I cannot imagine myself getting to 1 million. But you can kind of see, your brain can get on board with your first 20K. Your brain can do that. Your brain can get on board with that. But at the same time, your brain is like problem solving, but like, how am I going to do that? But like 20K, but I haven't made more than 1,000 or I haven't made any money, right? So that dynamic, right? That dichotomy is actually a really good place for you to be in. It's small enough that you can wrap your head around it, but it's a stretch. It's enough of a stretch that it gets you out of bed. It gets you into action, right? So we don't want to have such a big goal that we shut ourselves down, but we don't want to focus on, okay, I'm going to make $1 in my business. And then we're just like, oh, I mean, $1, like, of course I can make $1, right? Like that 20K is that sweet spot for you in your business. So I want you to set your intention on making your first 20K. And now you are a 20K entrepreneur who knows how to do that in just shorter and shorter amounts of time. We just shorten the time, sis. It's the best thing ever. And listen, we'll circle back to this conversation. When you've made that first 6 figures, I want you to never forget when you made that first 5K. And then that 5K turned into 10K and you were halfway to that 20K goal. And then you made it to that first 20K and then you're like, oh, 20% there to my first six figures. Now I just have to figure out how to do that in a shorter amount of time. It is absolutely, that is the sweet spot that I want for you all. Okay.